few requests on breaking down some poses, how to get into certain things. So there'll be some short tutorials that I'll be throwing out here in the near future. If there's something specific that you would like to work on, let me know. This one was the first requested, shall we say. So talking about getting into that grasshopper arm balance, a couple of suggestions I have is making sure for this one that you definitely warm up through the hips. And a lot of times when we think about warming up, we have a tendency to go just into the motion that we're doing, but really try to make sure that you're going into every single direction. So flexion, extension, internal, external rotation, little abduction, little adduction. So basically, if you just think of your hip as that ball and socket, that you're moving in every direction, warming it up. And then the other thing I really like to think of in this capacity too is working on engaging through the core, figuring out that activation through the core. So naturally, you might notice that our tendency is to kind of find just that flexion action in the core, but also thinking about wrapping around through transverse, moving through those obliques diagonally. All of that comes into play when we start to find that activation and that lift. And then also pelvic floor is a huge component of getting off the ground, so finding that as well. So the other thing that I also really like to integrate when we're talking about things like arm balances is the idea of resistance. So just to kind of get this idea into the head a little bit, if you move into kind of this deer-like posture that we oftentimes will think of as a yin posture, right? And then bringing, so the back leg is bent, wheel around however you need to find your way into the pose. And then bring your, currently this is my left leg, but if you're mirroring me, that'll be your right leg. So right elbow to the inside of that right foot in that arch. And then make a fist with the right hand, left hand, you're gonna push down into it. So feel yourself activate through the core, pull the belly button in through the spine, press the foot and the arm into one another, and then wiggle your left leg back behind you as straight as you feel like you can get it. Let your foot turn out. So you're going to be pressing in the inner edge of your left foot into the floor as you're driving your right foot and your right tricep into one another. So feel that for a moment. Squeeze, 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 and then relax. And then switch to the other side. So same kind of concept as when we're talking about tree, right? Pushing the foot into the leg and the leg back into the foot to start to find that stability. We're looking to find some of that resistance in all of these arm balances that we're doing. So switching to the other side, you're going to take your left elbow. If you can't quite reach there, no problem. You can always start to feel the activation here, but getting this movement is going to be integral to getting into the posture. So making the fist with the left hand, right hand gets put on top of it. You're going to press down, push your foot into your arm into your foot, and then take your right leg back behind you, just as far as it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, and then push the inner edge. Probably don't want to do it on your hardwood floor because it hurts a little bit in the ankle, right? But push the inner edge of your foot down into the ground as much as you can. Push left foot into left arm back into left foot, drive, 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 squeeze, 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 pull everything in the midline, and then you'll notice it kind of sink back down when I let it go. So that resistance and that energy helps us find a little lift. So as far as getting into this posture, a couple different things have to happen. We have to squeeze everything again into the midline. There's some push and some pull in opposite directions. My suggestion is two different ways to get into it. So option one is to begin by, I don't know what the best angle is going to be, but we're going to go here, is to start with more of that one-legged chair position. So again, getting the body warm enough where you can start to sink down into it, and then you're bringing that elbow into the arch of the foot, right? So here we can still feel a little bit of that push-pull, right? Hand starts to come down to the ground. You're creating that shelf with the elbows. Push the elbows back. Now I'm driving my left leg forward, 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 forward as I start to extend it out. So there's this action of my right heel driving into my left leg pushing forward into that. And then as I'm extending out, there's also a lot of inner thigh with that left leg as well. And then I'm pushing with my arm. So all of that is happening, right? So you can play with it on the other side. I will say that if you're super sweaty, or if you just made the mistake of putting on a bunch of lotion, like I did, you might find you're a little slippery. So you can always add a little extra traction, putting a towel on the back of your arm. So putting the foot, again, into that arm, maybe just taking a moment to find that action of here, feel it, engage to the core, hands come down to the ground. You let your foot rest on the back of your arm, squeeze the elbows in like chaturanga, start to extend that right leg out, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, and then play with coming back down. So that's one way to get into it, to play with it. Another way is from the ground up. I find, generally speaking, coming from the ground up for most of our arm balances is a little bit more challenging than coming from up down, so to speak. So, but it's still possible. So you can find more of this action seated, right? And then finding that connection of your foot and your arm here, and then starting to lift yourself up from that point. From that point, we bend the elbows, shift forward, and I'm sliding quite a bit right here, so I don't know if I'm gonna get my bottom foot off the ground, but you get the idea of pushing from that space. Try it one more time. Hook, push, 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 push. Foot in an arm, arm in a foot. Push, 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 push. Elbows go back as the chest goes forward. There we go. Sliding. So, again, a couple key components of any arm balance is really figuring out the whole engagement of the core, pulling from all directions, finding that resistance between arms and whatever it is that you're balancing on, finding the lift from the pelvic floor, and then making sure that everything's nice and warmed up before you go into the pose. Have fun playing.